Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. This is the show where I take a look at every classic Doctor Who story, plus a bunch of big finished audio dramas, one episode a day, 7 days a week. Before we begin, because in 2019, YouTube was caught data mining the information of underage users, therefore violating the Children's Online Privacy Protection Act, otherwise known as COPPA. They put measures into place to scapegoat creators. That being said, this video is not meant for children. It's not targeted at kids. It is not aimed at kids. Doctor is a family show that kids can watch, certainly, but this video, as the case with all the other videos on my channel, will be processing it from an adult perspective, with potentially talking about adult themes. Viewer discretion is advised. With that out of the way, today we are taking a look. It is the 10th. It's the 10th of April, 2020, and we are starting to look at the second story in the Fifth Doctor's Lost Stories trilogy, Hexagora, which comes from a story by Peter Lang and Hazel Adair, and written by Paul Finch, who is who's a big Finnish writer who we haven't really covered before because, well, he actually hasn't. He's wrote a bit of. Well, he's written for Big Finish, but this is the first story, and it's really just the first of two stories, both adaptations of Lost Stories, that we are actually covering, because he wrote a companion chronicle, and a countermeasures story, which is interesting because he's not. You don't necessarily think he is. He's gonna be the. This is gonna be what he. What you would get for this story, but no, you get a completely, essentially a new a writer's only written a couple of things, but actually Hexagora Part 1 starts out great. We start out with some mystery of a reporter essentially being abducted in mysterious circumstances. Which is a great way of getting us started. You have people disappearing, and you have the Doctor and Nyssa and Tegan right after their experiences on Florana in Brisbane in 1983. The Doctor managed to actually pilot the TARDIS, and you actually get to see, this Mike Brannigan character who is Tegan's friend, and it ends up there's actually a trace leading to a different planet. So the first half of this episode, the first third of this episode is all mystery, all really, really solid mystery to set things up. Like you have personal connection to Tegan, so that makes you interested in what happened to this guy, and you have a reason for the Doctor and Nyssa to care. So they follow an ion trail to the planet Lupara, which presents an even further mystery, because there happens to be a replica of London from the time of Queen Elizabeth, and on Lupara and running the planet is Queen Zafira, played by Jacqueline Pearce. Now Jacqueline Pearce is one of those actresses who we'll see quite a bit of. She was in the TV show in the Sixth Doctor's era, and she's played characters for the Seventh Doctor, well, obviously for this story for the Seventh Doctor and for the Eighth Doctor and War Doctor, at several points. So you have we will be seeing her again, But she plays the role of Zafira really, really well. She has two husbands, Lord Zellinger, played by Dan Starkey, uh, of Sontaran fame, and Lord Jezebel. Lord Zellinger is the one who is jealous, and you basically have the idea of her flirting with the Doctor throughout this entire first episode. Um, and the episode only ends when Tegan actually finds Mike Brannigan after sneaking out of the palace, because they are taken to the palace after some bar fights, and into basically a into there's a whole brawl, and everything is different. It's weird. You know, it's a weird uh you know it's a weird little you have this nice little bit of world building here as she's flirting with the Doctor, and the Doctor's kind of just not there, and Tegan finds Mike, and Nyssa is kind of taken for royalty, which she is royalty technically, but like there's discussions of her. She doesn't get much to do in this episode. She's just sort of there for exposition, which is kind of a shame, because she usually would be a really, really fun character to explore as you explore sort of a world where there is royalty. It's not something that you normally get. You usually get something a little different and a little more fleshed out. I will say that it is enjoyable the way the episode plays around with a bunch of this stuff, because you do have a lot of things going on. There's a lot of world building. Luparis feels really, really fleshed out for an area. There's like a hexagonal structure that's mysterious. Oddly enough, this story was originally just going to be called Hex, which I think is a weird title. But overall, the biggest problems here are really that fact that Nyssa sadly doesn't have much to do. She's just relegated to the sidelines. And, being relegated to the sidelines isn't great for her character, because she is usually a much more interesting character and much more just dealing with much more fun sort of things for the story to cover. But overall, you have an intrigue. It's not like the Mind Robber Peterling's previous story, but overall, I'd give part 1 of Hexagora an 8 out of 10. Alright, it is the 11th of April 2020, and I just finished listening to part 2 of Hexagora, which... Okay, this story is interesting for a variety of reasons. One of them being that part 2 actually ends with essentially the same cliffhanger as part 1, Tegan finding Mike Bretherton. Now, though, this is because the Mike Bretherton she found at the end of part 1 is resolved to be not actually Mike Bretherton. He just looks like him. He's played by Toby Hadoke. He doesn't even have an Australian accent. He, acts completely differently, and is basically set out to be a completely different character from the character that Tegan knows, which is a really interesting sort of idea that you have this, because you have the story play around with the idea that this character that Tegan doesn't know is is either masquerading as her friend, or possibly being, pretending, possibly pretending to be her friend, but not like, there isn't ever an actual, there isn't an actual explanation as to, okay, who is he really? What's his deal? Is he the guy she knows, and or is she just, is he something completely different? Because you have just that entire aspect of the story is really really is interesting, and you play around with, it plays around with what the story is doing, and what the story can do with with this different setting, and this different, and just this different idea, because there is something totally different and totally weird and totally playing around with the characters for this, this plot. Is there there is different, there are just different things that the characters can do, and different things that the characters can play around with, which I think are really really solid, and are just a really good idea. But you also have the stuff with the Doctor where he's basically he's basically forced into a marriage. Like there's essentially a shotgun wedding, with the Doctor having to marry Queen Zafira, built up to do something, something so different, there is, there is just the different idea. Like the Doctor is forced, and he has to deal with Lord, Lord Zalinger, who is jealous of who the Doctor is, and who um, and who all these people are. There's this real sense of weirdness, because there is the fear, and and you do get the idea of, and you do get the whole story being about this, about this whole this character, and what they do. It's very much a story all about, about who the characters, it's something so different, and something so weird. It's something that I think just the story does really really well. The jealousy, and just locking the Doctor up, which is a bit annoying because there isn't as much of him to go around. He is, he's there. There is something different. But also, just the cliffhanger is really, really fascinating, because you have Mike Brotherton showing up again, but this time he's an insect, so you have something weird, and you have a bunch of things. Like you have this idea of their people being put into cryosleep, in twin chambers that are, so that um, so that the so that you get the entire story. um, you know you get the story going on and being different. But it is pretty good. Um, that being, you know, that being said, it is really solid. It's really good. So overall, I would have to give part 2 of Hexagora an 8 out of 10. It is the 12th of April 2020, Easter Sunday, and I just finished listening to part 3 of Hexagora, which is where the story takes a downturn. Mainly because, well, the story goes into this big problem here where, for this part of the plot, Tegan kind of acts really out of character for this entire episode, which really brings the episode down. Now, it's not like Janet Fielding isn't giving a good performance. She's, having fun with the role, but the way she treats this insect version of Mike Bretherton is just really off, because it's just this thing where you get the entire story is built around built around the well, it's built around everything, which is just, it's just one of those weird things where you kind of see what the story might be doing, and where the plot is going, but it's not normal. This isn't like a normal plot where everything is building up to something that completely makes sense. It's just because what Finch does with the script is just makes things not work. Like, okay, so you have the whole interesting stuff with the revolution, and this actually gets to do something really, really fun here. Like, she admits to wanting to join the revolution before we actually get a bunch of exposition as to what's going on and where, what the actual characters are doing. This is something that is, interesting and a cool plot, and something just something different for the story really to do. It's playing around with the whole different characters, and what they can bring to things. Like you really you get the plot going, and you get things working. You get things. You get the story for what it is, and what it is interesting, but it's not. It's not entirely. it's not entirely something different. It's just there. It's just a plot. Um, it's um, it's such a different story for what it does. Like you have, the actual people on Lupara being the Hexagora, which is their race name. Uh, you know, there is you're doing something different, like that's revealed to the Doctor. That like one of the Hexagors is going to inhabit his body, which is different. Like they're inhabiting people's body that they take. That's why Mike is now an insect, which is definitely an interesting idea, and it's something that the story can kind of do and kind of get away with, not perfectly, but it's enough that you get the interesting bit of story out of it. Not the most fun. And you get you don't get everything ending to be perfect, but it's weird the way that it's done. It's doing something different for the story, and it's something for the plot to really play around with. It's just not great. It's just different. It's completely different, and something completely something for the it's something for the story to do. And you have Jacqueline, which is great, the revolution, which is fun, if not a little off. But yeah, it's not perfect. It's just something different for the story to do, and something to and doing something different. But it's a good episode, but it's not great. It's just sort of there. So overall, I would have to give part 3 of Hexagora a 6 out of 10. Alright, it is the 13th of April 2020, and I just finished listening to part 4 of Hexagora, the concluding episode, which it kind of limps to the conclusion here. This is a story where you have the ideas, you have very good ideas, very interesting ideas, very fun things that the story can do, but sadly it's just not what how a good way to end the story. This is one where you get you get just a bunch of weird things going on with the characters, and you have like the last episode ended on a really weak cliffhanger of the Doctor being like, yes, I will marry you. Okay, that's it's not coming out of anywhere. Like, it's obvious he has a plan. It's a very, very weak cliffhanger as it is, and this final episode doesn't do anything to improve the cliffhanger. It's just, oh, building up to the wedding while the Doctor's sort of figuring things out, like, oh, like, okay, like you get Queen Zafira being like, okay, I'm going, it's basically, okay, I'm going to be basically doing, you know, going to invade Gallifrey because I'm trying to let my people survive. And, like, there is a peaceful solution to the story. And it is, you know, a good peaceful solution that the story ends up taking. But it doesn't feel earned with the characters. It feels like they just did the entire, you know, doing all of these, all of these different things that the story, that the story could possibly do and could possibly create, but doesn't create. There's, like, the idea there, and it doesn't do anything with it. Like, you have an action stuff, you have Tegan and Mike making up, and everyone ends up happy and survives. Like, it's a very, very weird ending. Obviously the performances are fun to listen to, and you have the Doctor being a really, really solid at creating the story. There is, it's something that just kind of happens. It's a different sort of idea, to have everything end so peacefully. And why I don't think it feels entirely earned is that you kind of have set up Queen Zafira as this almost over-the-top villain, and not the standard character that you could have. It's weird in that regard, that this is what the story does. It's just a story that ends and doesn't doesn't really fully do everything. Like, and what's weird is that the entire story is, like, it's all short episodes. They're not, like, long, usual Big Finish length episodes. They're about the length of television episodes. Which makes sense. I mean, this was a different thing, but it's just a weird little thing that the a weird little thing that the story does. It's different. it doesn't do a lot of it doesn't do a lot of things to create your story and your plot. So yeah, you get the story to be you get the story to be something different, and something that the plot can't necessarily do. You know. It's just weird. Like, again, you have the weird stuff with Tegan not being a weird sort of character. Overall, it just makes for an average end. So overall, I'd have to give part 4 of Hexagora a 5 out of 10. That being said, we add up the scores, and the average amount to give Hexagora a final score of 6.75 out of 10. Thank you everybody for watching this installment of the Ultimate Doctor Who Marathon. As always, please leave a like, comment, and subscribe if you haven't already. And join me next time when we start to look at the final story in the trilogy of 5th Doctor Lost Stories with the Children of Seth.